There is a shelf in a Lancaster County barn that produces more protein per square foot than a cattle ranch. No pasture, no feed, no veterinary bills, no slaughterhouse, no refrigerated transport. The family that built it spent $11 on materials and has been harvesting from it continuously for 9 years. And the $22 billion commercial mushroom industry has known about this system since the 1940s and has spent 8 decades making sure you associate mushroom cultivation with expensive laboratory equipment, sterile technique, and complexity. It does not require any of that. It requires a log, some sawdust, and a culture that the Amish have been propagating since the 1700s. And what comes off that shelf is not just protein. It is a nutritional profile that no animal product or supplement can match. Commercially grown versions are produced in conditions designed to maximize yield and minimize cost, which is in direct opposition to nutritional density. But before I show you the system, I need to tell you about a study that a $22 billion industry would prefer you never read. In 2021, researchers at Penn State published a comparison between commercial white button mushrooms and traditionally log-cultivated shiitake mushrooms. The comparison measured protein, ergothioneine, beta-glucan, and vitamin D2 levels. The results were not close. Traditionally cultivated shiitake contained 2.3 times the ergothioneine and 4 times the beta-glucan content of commercial white buttons. Vitamin D2 levels after sunlight exposure exceeded the vitamin D content of a glass of fortified milk by a factor of 6. Beta-glucans are the polysaccharide compounds in mushroom cell walls that have been documented to modulate immune function. They are the reason mushroom extracts appear in oncology research and traditional medicine in Japan, Korea, and China for over 2,000 years. The commercial mushroom contains a fraction of what the traditionally cultivated version contains because production conditions maximize yield, not nutrition. The Penn State researchers did not publish a press release. The study appeared in a journal that most consumers will never encounter. The industry responded by continuing to sell white buttons at 90% market share. No mainstream media outlet covered the finding. Because the finding did not sell anything. It threatened a market by showing an $11 log produces food. The commercial alternative cannot match. Here is how the white button mushroom came to represent 90% of American sales, and what was lost when it happened. In the 1920s, American mushroom cultivation was a regionally diverse practice. Oyster mushrooms were cultivated on straw in the mid-Atlantic. Shiitake were being grown by Japanese immigrant communities in California and Hawaii, on logs cut from the local oak and alder forests. Wild mushrooms were harvested and sold through networks of foragers in every region of the country. The mushroom market was fragmented, local, and nutritionally rich. Then the white button mushroom, Agaricus bisporus, became the focus of industrial development. It could be grown on pasteurized compost in underground caves and cellars under nearly complete environmental control. No dependence on seasonality. No dependence on hardwood logs. No outdoor exposure required. In the limestone caves of Pennsylvania, white buttons could be produced year-round in controlled conditions that no other cultivated species could tolerate. The economies of scale were immediate and decisive. By 1940, white button production in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, was supplying a national market. The regional varieties, the log-cultivated shiitake, the oyster mushrooms on straw, were priced out of the market by volume production economics. The producers of white buttons had no interest in a comparison that made their product look inferior. The producers of traditional varieties had already largely exited. Within one generation, the nutritional diversity of the American mushroom market collapsed to a single species optimized for yield. The Amish did not participate in that collapse. They kept their logs. They kept their cultures. They kept harvesting from their woodland. The nutritional profile of what they harvested continued to reflect what mushrooms are when you grow them the way mushrooms evolved to grow. The Amish communities that settled Lancaster County in the early 1700s came from the Rhine Valley regions of Germany and Switzerland. German forestry records from the 1600s describe forest managers deliberately inoculating fallen oak logs with mushroom cultures to produce food. The technique was not farming in the modern sense. It was forest management. You manage the composition of your woodland to include the right tree species. Mushrooms were not a crop you planted. They were a relationship you maintained with your woodland. The mushrooms were protein. The mushrooms were medicine. The mushrooms were food security through every winter. You did not abandon that because a grocery store started selling something cheaper. The culture they have maintained is not a commercial species. It is a regional variant propagated from Lancaster County woodland for over 200 years. It fruits prolifically on local oak. It tolerates the humidity swings of a Pennsylvania summer without the environmental controls that commercial cultivation requires. It has adapted to the specific fungal competitors present in Lancaster County soil and wood. It is uniquely their family's culture, and the nutritional profile of what it produces reflects 200 years of adaptation to conditions that commercial varieties have never experienced. Now let me explain the cultivation system, so you understand why it is practical for any property that has access to hardwood, including properties in suburban areas where neighbors put hardwood logs out with the yard waste every spring. The traditional Amish log inoculation method works as follows. You source freshly cut hardwood logs, oak, maple, beech, hornbeam, or alder. Cut in late winter or very early spring when the wood is freshly felled and the fungal competitors have not yet established. The logs should be 4 to 8 inches in diameter and 3 to 4 feet long. Freshly cut is critical. A log sitting exposed for more than a few weeks has already been colonized by competitor fungi that will prevent your culture from establishing. Fresh cut logs, sealed at the cut ends with wax within a few days of felling, give your culture the clean substrate it needs. You inoculate the log by drilling holes in a diamond pattern across the entire surface, approximately 6 inches apart in each direction. The holes are 5/16 of an inch in diameter and 1 inch deep. You fill each hole with mushroom spawn. The mycelium colonized grain or sawdust carries the culture you want to grow. You seal each inoculated hole with melted cheese wax. You stack the inoculated logs in a shaded location with good air circulation, off the ground on a simple frame of scrap lumber. For the first 6 to 12 months, nothing visible happens. The mycelium is colonizing the interior of the log, spreading through the wood fiber, digesting the lignin and cellulose, building the network that will eventually produce fruiting bodies. This is the period most first-time cultivators misunderstand. They expect visible results and conclude that something went wrong. Nothing went wrong. The log is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. The mycelium is building. The relationship is developing. Patience is the only input required. After 6 to 12 months, the first flush appears. Clusters of mushroom fruiting bodies erupting from the log surface and the cut ends. The first flush is small, a few clusters. The log is not fully colonized yet. Subsequent flushes over the following years are larger. A well-colonized log will produce 3 to 5 substantial flushes per year, for 4 to 7 years before the wood is fully consumed. The total yield from a single 4-foot oak log over its productive life is approximately 15 to 25 pounds total, from one log that cost you nothing but the time to cut or collect it. The Amish family I visited has 40 logs in rotation. The staggered rotation means there are always logs in active fruiting stage. They harvest fresh mushrooms approximately 40 weeks of the year. Their harvest is sufficient to provide meaningful protein and nutritional contribution to the household diet without any purchased supplement or commercial product. The logs live in a simple open-sided shed that provides shade and breaks wind. No temperature control, no humidity system, no electricity. The Lancaster County climate provides what the mushrooms need. The shed keeps the rain from washing the spore prints away. Total cost: $11 for a drill bit, $20 for spawn, $8 for wax, $39 to establish a system for the next decade. From logs you collected from your property or your neighbor's yard waste, the spawn can be propagated from your own harvests. Let me describe spawn propagation because this is the piece that completes the system and eliminates the need to buy spawn every time. Mushroom mycelium grows on any carbon-rich substrate in the right conditions. coffee grounds, cardboard soaked in water, hardwood sawdust, straw, grain. These are the most common home propagation substrates. The simplest method uses cardboard. You take the corrugated cardboard from any shipping box, soak it in water for 2 hours, tear it into hand-sized pieces, and layer it in a sealed plastic bag or lidded container with small pieces of the inner white mycelium. The mycelium from the base, which has been in contact with the substrate of the log, is still alive and actively growing. Placed on moist cardboard in a dark location at room temperature, it will colonize the cardboard within 2 to 4 weeks. The colonized cardboard is your spawn. You tear it into small pieces and use it to inoculate new logs. The culture you are propagating is the same culture that has been growing on your logs. The adaptation continues. The relationship deepens. The Amish family in Lancaster County has been propagating their culture from their own harvests for as long as anyone in the family can remember. They do not buy spawn. They have never needed to buy spawn after the initial inoculation. The culture is theirs for generations. The cardboard method is simpler than what they use, which involves hardwood sawdust in glass jars that are pressure cooked to sterilize. But the cardboard method works well enough for home cultivation and requires nothing more than a cardboard box and a container with a lid. Now I need to tell you about the vitamin D detail that connects log cultivation directly to a significant nutritional deficiency in the population. But first, the beta-glucan research. It connects traditional cultivation to some of the most significant immunology research of the last 30 years. Beta-glucans are long-chain polysaccharides found in the cell walls of mushrooms. They are also found in oats and barley. But the beta-glucans in mushrooms are structurally distinct. Their arrangement allows them to interact with immune receptors, like dectin-1. This modulates the activity of macrophages and natural killer cells. This is not alternative medicine. This is mainstream immunology. Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center has an active clinical research program investigating mushroom-derived beta-glucans as adjunct therapy in oncology. Clinical research consistently shows greater immune activity from higher beta-glucan concentrations. The Penn State study showed log-cultivated shiitake contains 4 times more. The mushroom in a Lancaster County barn is a categorically different food than the mushroom in the plastic clamshell at your grocery store. The commercial product has the name. The log product has the biology. The supplement industry noticed. Mushroom extract supplements, selling concentrated beta-glucans from various species, generated approximately $4 billion in revenue in 2023. The supplements are effective in the sense that they concentrate the compounds. But the most bioavailable form of any nutrient is generally the food form, embedded in the matrix of other compounds the organism produces, not the extracted and concentrated version separated from that matrix. The research comparing food form mushroom consumption to isolated beta-glucan supplementation is limited. The supplement industry funds research on supplements. The family growing shiitake on oak logs in their yard does not fund research. The comparison that would be most illuminating remains unconducted. The Lancaster County family does not take mushroom supplements. They eat mushrooms they grew on logs. 4 times the beta-glucan of commercial product, in a food matrix that includes ergothioneine, vitamin D precursors, and the complete nutritional profile of a mushroom allowed to develop fully in natural conditions. Their immune support budget is 0. Their mushroom cultivation budget was $39 9 years ago. Vitamin D deficiency affects approximately 42% of American adults. 42%. The most widely consumed vitamin supplement is vitamin D. Americans spend $3 billion a year supplementing a vitamin that is produced by sun exposure and present in one widely available food source, traditionally produced mushrooms that have been exposed to direct sunlight. Here is the mechanism. Mushrooms contain ergosterol in their flesh. When a mushroom is exposed to ultraviolet light, ergosterol is converted to vitamin D2. The conversion happens rapidly. 20 minutes of direct sunlight on a freshly harvested mushroom can produce vitamin D2 concentrations exceeding the recommended daily intake. The conversion continues even after harvest. A dried mushroom that was sun-dried rather than heat-dried retains stable vitamin D2 concentrations for months. The commercial white button mushroom, constituting 90% of sales, is grown indoors under artificial light. It contains essentially no vitamin D2. The mushroom you could use to address deficiency is sold to you in a condition that makes it nutritionally irrelevant for that purpose. Some commercial producers sell UV-treated mushrooms at a premium. You can achieve the same result by placing any mushroom gill side up in sunlight, including a commercially purchased mushroom that has been UV deprived. The conversion mechanism is still present in the mushroom tissue. The sun activates it. Free. The Amish family's log-cultivated mushrooms are harvested outdoors. They are sun-exposed naturally as part of the harvest and handling process. The family does not think about vitamin D. They eat mushrooms they grew on logs in conditions aligned with the biology of the organism. That gap between what the organism produces when grown correctly and what the industrial system produces efficiently runs through every video in this series. The earth tube produces a coefficient of performance of 28. The air conditioner that moves refrigerant through a compressor produces 3.5. The log-cultivated shiitake produces 4 times the beta-glucan of the commercial white button, grown in a controlled environment in 2 weeks. Fermented cabbage produces 1 trillion organisms per tablespoon. The probiotic capsule produces 10 billion. The ratios are always the same. The natural process, maintained in alignment with its own biology, outperforms the industrial approximation by multiples, not by a small margin, by multiples. The industrial version is cheaper to produce, standardized, and scalable. It fits a supply chain, a regulatory framework, and a retail shelf. The natural version fits none of those requirements. It cannot be standardized, produced on a 2-week cycle, or shipped across the country. It can only be produced where it is consumed, by the person who will eat it, in the time frame the biology requires. The Amish never needed it to fit a supply chain. They needed it to feed their family through winter. Those are different design criteria, and they produce different results. The log sits in the shade of the Lancaster County barn. The mycelium is building inside it right now, slowly, without electricity, without temperature control, without anyone's permission or anyone's product, building protein and beta-glucans and ergothioneine and ergosterol waiting to become vitamin D. In the first 20 minutes of sun, it encounters after harvest. Building what the commercial alternative charges you $22 billion a year to approximate, with a fraction of the biology intact. The log cost nothing. The culture cost $39 9 years ago. The family has been eating from it since. Now I want to address the person who has been reading this thinking the same thing they thought reading every video in this series, that this only applies to rural properties. That you need land, you need a woodland, you need space that most Americans do not have. I want to address that directly because the log cultivation system is the one most accessible to people in dense residential environments. A freshly cut oak log 4 feet long and 6 inches in diameter weighs 35 pounds and takes up less space than a kitchen chair. A stack of 10 logs in active cultivation fits in a space 4 feet wide by 4 feet long by 3 feet tall. That fits on a shaded balcony. It fits in a corner of a covered porch. It fits against the shaded north wall of a house. The logs need shade and air circulation. They do not need soil. They do not need irrigation. They do not need to be outdoors. They need to be protected from direct sun, and they need to not dry out completely, meaning occasional misting during dry periods in summer, a spray bottle twice a week in July. That is the maintenance requirement for a stack of 10 logs in active production. The source of the logs is the second objection. I live in a city, they say. I have no access to freshly cut hardwood. This objection dissolves in 5 minutes of research. Every city in America has tree services removing trees constantly. Every spring and fall, the volume of wood being removed from residential properties is enormous. Tree services pay to dump that wood. They will deliver it to you free of charge because you are solving a disposal cost for them. Call any tree service in your area. Tell them you want fresh-cut hardwood logs. oak or maple preferred, 4 to 8 inches in diameter, cut to 4-foot lengths. In most cities, you will have logs within a week at zero cost. The tree service gets rid of material they would otherwise pay to dump. You get the substrate for a food system that will produce for the next 7 years. I did this in my own neighborhood. I called 3 tree services. The second one called back within 2 days. They were removing a large red oak from a residential property. They delivered 8 logs to my driveway at no charge. I inoculated 6 of them that weekend. The other 2 I kept in a shaded corner under a tarp to inoculate 2 months later for a staggered production schedule. Total cash outlay for the entire operation, $42 for spawn and wax. Total time, 4 hours over 1 weekend. That was 3 years ago. The logs have produced 3 flushes each. I have harvested 12 pounds of fresh shiitake from 6 logs. At current retail prices, that represents $100 to $140 of market value in food produced from a small investment. The economics are not the point. The nutrition is not even the point. The point is that the relationship exists. There is a stack of logs in a corner of my yard that is producing food regardless of what the supply chain is doing. Regardless of what grocery store prices are doing or what any external system is doing. The mycelium does not read the news. It colonizes the wood. It fruits when conditions are right. It produces what it produces. And all I do is mist it in July and harvest when the caps curl at the edges. The Amish have been doing this for 300 years and they never thought of it as remarkable. It was just how you managed your woodland, just how you kept protein on the table through winter, just what you did with the logs that came down in the storm last November. Nothing special, nothing complicated, just a relationship between people and fungi that has been running continuously in Pennsylvania since before the country existed, and that the commercial mushroom industry, with all its controlled environments and pasteurized compost, has spent 80 years building a market around. Now I want to give you the species breakdown by region, because species selection matters. The wrong species on the wrong log is a common failure. In the eastern hardwood zones, Pennsylvania to New England, shiitake on oak is the standard. Red oak, white oak, and chestnut oak all perform well. The Lancaster County culture is shiitake. It is forgiving, prolific, and well adapted to the humidity swings of eastern summers. Oyster mushrooms on sugar maple or beech are the faster option. Oyster colonizes in 3 to 4 months and fruits abundantly in the first year. In the upper Midwest, Wisconsin to Michigan, oyster mushrooms on basswood and cottonwood perform exceptionally. These species tolerate the colder temperatures better. In the Pacific Northwest, lion's mane on alder and big-leaf maple is the traditional regional cultivation. It produces a documented neuroprotective compound profile. The cultivation method is identical to shiitake. The nutritional profile is distinct and arguably superior for certain applications. In the South, oyster mushrooms on tulip poplar and sweet gum tolerate the heat and humidity that would stress shiitake. Southern growers use shade structures with misting systems in August. The misting system is a garden hose on a timer. The structure is a tarp. Every region has the wood. Every region has the species. Every region has the shade. That $11 log in your yard is producing food that researchers study as therapy. Your harvest produces more vitamin D than fortified milk. The $39 investment you make this weekend will still be feeding you in 7 years from logs delivered to your driveway for free. Now you have it. Drop your state and hardwood situation in the comments. I read everyone. Next video closes this series with the design principle every Amish home embeds in the structure before anything else. It's the foundation of self-sufficiency. It costs $50 in 1 weekend to add to any home. You'll realize every home built recently was missing its most important component. Stay close.